And joining me now is Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. He is the chair of the Democratic Governors Association and is supporting President Biden's reelection campaign. Thank you so much for being here, Governor.
Pleasure to be with you.
So we know, of course, that this is going to be a big fundraiser. The Biden campaign is even calling this what could be what they believe to be the most successful political fundraiser in history. That being said, what's the significance of today in this event beyond the money?
Yeah, well, it's what the money can do. And we saw it out here in Minnesota, of course, a purple state out here. You know, this race will be won in the Midwest from here to Wisconsin, Michigan, over to Pennsylvania. And what it meant is three major operatives were hired out here. A campaign team is out here. We see the structure being put in place. What this money does, it translates into the folks who will be out there to knock on the doors, to get out the vote, to make sure that we're getting the numbers necessary. And that's exactly how you win these campaigns. People aren't paying attention yet. This is preparing for November, and this money and this kind of enthusiasm around it will translate into real votes. So I'm really excited about it. I think it shows they're taking it very seriously. It shows that enthusiasm gap will start to close as people recognize, look, this is a president who's delivered 15 million jobs, got us out of the mess of COVID that Donald Trump left us in, and they'll start being reminded that while this president's out there doing the work of rebuilding roads and bridges, the former president's in court trying to deal with his mess. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the event. I wish I'd be there.
Well, I have to ask you, when you think about the fact that both Presidents Obama and President Clinton, they both were able to win their reelection bids, what do you think President Biden could learn from them when you think about the fact that he, of course, is now trying to do what they did?
Yeah, I think it's organization. I do think it's being serious about this, having been around for especially President Obama's second run. I was a member of Congress at that time, and I watched. If you recall, he was behind. His numbers weren't much higher than this. The polls had him done early in that, and of course, that's not the way it worked out, and we all won again. I think it's staying focused on the fundamentals. Vice President Harris was out here a couple weeks ago, was at a Planned Parenthood clinic, stopped at a high school softball game. They're starting to get that retail politicking goes. And look, the contrast between your revenge tour and the angry rants coming from Donald Trump versus this positive vision of what we can do. I think that's what they should listen to. I think they're doing it. I think President Obama's reelection proved that you don't have to look early on what the polls are. That's not an indication of where we'll end. So I'm feeling confident. And look, President Trump now taking and using any money they're raising, which is far less than this, and putting it towards his legal funds. The Republican Party in Minnesota has $52 in the bank. They have less in Michigan. Those are real liabilities when it comes time to a campaign, and I just don't see how they're going to turn that on a dime. So I'm excited about it.
And Governor, you bring up former President Trump. We know, at least according to the polls, which are still in the margin of error, that President Biden is behind Trump, it seems, in a number of polls. Is the money enough to close that gap, the money that the Biden campaign is raising here?
Well, it's part of it. The other part will be is that people will be reminded what a disaster Donald Trump left us on. I was there when he was telling us infrastructure week every other day was going to be that. President Biden was just out here delivering $1 billion for a major bridge in northern Minnesota. So it's a combination of the money allows us to tell the story. This becomes the binary choice about our future of hopefulness, rebuilding, an inclusive place, reproductive rights being something that's protected, the ACA and affordable health care. That is all opposite if it's a Donald Trump presidency. And I think what starts to happen is now, this is somewhat at this time kind of a referendum on the frustration people feel. And while America's economy is better than any other one, prices are still up. So there's kind of a general malaise that gets attached to the president. But once the choice becomes clear and once we start to move into all of the positives that have been done, it'll clarify itself. So I'm confident we'll reelect President Biden and we'll have a much more positive outlook on things as we get closer to the election.
And you talk about the economy. This Fox News poll yesterday, about 20% of people said the economy is the president's biggest accomplishment, but about the same number of people said it's also his biggest failure. So how could the president square that? How can he get Americans feeling good about the economy, even if they see the numbers, but they don't think that they're feeling that?
Yeah, and they might not. I said, look, we're coming up on an Easter weekend, and I saw the report about the price of eggs. Well, the price of eggs are up mainly because of bird flu, because of some of the things that have happened, and a president gets attached to that. But I think you start showing people what's been happened, the job creations, and to be very clear, none of those things, there's nothing that the former president can talk about that comes near to that. And I think as we start to see some of the inflationary pressures come down, we start to hear more talk about where it's at, folks will come home. Because look, this is a choice. The world is struggling on all of this, but the choice is very clear. Democracy, protecting that democracy, the freedoms, the reproductive choices that can be made, versus this just dystopian just weirdness that's coming out of Donald Trump every time he gives something. That is going to be the choice at the end of the day.
Well, there is, though, this liability that President Biden seems to have. There was an uncommitted vote in your state show on Super Tuesday, 19% of people voting uncommitted. Is the president doing enough to address this criticism coming from Democrats over his handling of the Israel-Hamas war?
Yeah, look, this is, and Minnesotans are an independent people. We've elected independent governors, and I'm proud that our party can have this conversations. This is what campaigns are supposed to do, and I think so. I think you saw the UN resolution on a ceasefire. I think you see the president talking about a need to have a lasting two-state solution, the need to relieve the humanitarian crisis that's in Gaza, while also recognizing Israel's right to exist. So I think those folks were expressing a democratic frustration. That's healthy. But at the end of the day, they're certainly not going to go with Donald Trump. The question is, we need to make sure they're motivated enough to realize they need to come back, that they need to get back on the issue of what happens in the Middle East, but also what happens on reproductive rights, what happens on healthcare, what happens on environment. On all of those things, those are folks that are with President Biden. So, yeah, I think they're doing it, and I think it's healthy, and I think those people have every right to express their frustrations. But at the end of the day, they will come home, and that will help make the difference.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you wanted to be at the event, but we appreciate you being here on Meet the Press Now.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.